I never thought I would find myself in this situation. My name is Mark, and I've been married to Jenna for 5 years. At first glance, we seemed like the perfect couple. We were that cliché image of happiness, young, in love, and seemingly inseparable. Our friends envied us, and we often heard comments about how we were a match made in heaven. But beneath that glossy facade, things were starting to fray around the edges. It began subtly. Jenna, who once loved sitting on the couch with me binge-watching our favorite shows, suddenly had work commitments that kept her out late. I was supportive, understanding that her career was important. As a marketing manager, she worked hard and often took on extra hours to climb the corporate ladder. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Little changes began to manifest, a shift in her attitude, a distant look in her eyes, and a growing lack of interest in our relationship. My gut instinct told me something was wrong, but every time I tried to bring it up, she'd brush it off. "You're being paranoid, Mark," she would say with that dismissive tone that made my heart sink. "I'm just busy, that's all." So I pushed my concerns aside, hoping they were just figments of my imagination. Things escalated when I started noticing small things like her phone being glued to her hand. She giggle at text messages and quickly hide her screen when I walked by. It felt like a betrayal even before I knew the truth. My suspicions grew, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions without evidence. I wanted to trust her, and so I did for far too long. The turning point came one fateful evening. I had just come home early from work and the house was eerily quiet. I called out to her, expecting her to respond, but there was no answer. As I walked through the living room, I noticed her phone buzzing on the coffee table. Without thinking, I picked it up. I know it was a breach of trust, but in that moment I was desperate for answers. What I found shattered my world. Messages between Jenna and someone named Jake flooded her chat history. The texts were flirtatious at first, slowly evolving into something much more explicit. I felt my heart race as I scrolled through them, each message hitting me like a punch to the gut. "Can't wait to feel you tonight," one message read. Another joked about how much she missed his touch. I couldn't contain my anger. Jenna had been lying to me and I felt like the biggest fool. I slammed her phone down on the table just as she walked into the room. The look on her face was a mixture of shock and guilt. "Mark, what are you doing?" she stammered. I didn't respond. Instead, I held up her phone, each word on the screen burning like acid in my throat. "Care to explain this?" I demanded. Her expression shifted from shock to defiance in an instant. "Those are just texts, it's not what you think," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "Oh really?" I shot back. "Because it sounds a lot like you're having an affair." At that moment, Jenna's facade began to crack. She stumbled through a series of excuses, claiming it was harmless flirting and that it didn't mean anything. But the more she spoke, the angrier I became. "Harmless, is that what you call it?" I shouted, feeling the betrayal wash over me like a tidal wave. Her attempts at explanation fell flat, and I could see her scrambling for words, desperately trying to salvage something that was already lost. It was infuriating and heartbreaking all at once. I had devoted my life to this woman, and she made me look like a fool. I felt the anger bubbling inside me, but beneath that anger there was a profound sadness creeping in. I had trusted Jenna, invested my heart into our marriage, and she had shattered it all in a matter of moments. The confrontation ended with a silence that felt heavier than any words could convey. I knew then that my world had irrevocably changed. The reality of the situation sank in. I had to decide what I wanted to do next. The emotional roller coaster I was on had just begun, and I was nowhere near ready for the ride ahead. I spent the rest of that night packing the floors of our house, replaying the conversation over and over in my head. I felt like my entire life had been flipped upside down, and I was left to sort through the wreckage. A part of me wanted to scream, to lash out, but another part wanted to understand how we got here. How could someone I loved so deeply betray me so completely? As dawn broke, I was still lost in thought. It was time to make some decisions. I didn't know where this journey would take me, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let Jenna's actions define me. I had to take control of my life, no matter how painful the road ahead would be. The days following our confrontation felt like a foggy haze. I went through the motions of living, but inside, I was a storm waiting to break. Jenna attempted to reach out, trying to talk things through, but I wasn't ready. Every time she spoke, I felt that familiar anger bubbling up again, and honestly, I wasn't sure I even wanted to hear her excuses anymore. Nothing she could say would undo the betrayal or restore the trust we once had. After a few days of silence between us, I finally decided to confront her again. It was a Saturday morning, and I could feel the tension in the air as I walked into the living room, where she was sitting, nervously tapping her phone. She looked up at me, her expression a mixture of hope and fear. "Mark, I really want to talk about this," she began, her voice shaky. "Talk about what? How you've been sleeping with someone else, how I've been a fool for believing in you." I shot back, my voice sharp and cold. Jenna flinched at my tone but pressed on. "I messed up, okay, but it was a mistake. I was feeling lost and I didn't mean for it to happen. You have to believe me." "Believe you? You think I can just forget those messages? You said it didn't mean anything, but I saw the way you were talking to him. That wasn't just harmless flirting, Jenna." I was packing now, my heart racing with every word that came out. I was confused. "You've been so absorbed in your work that I felt invisible. I just wanted to feel wanted again," she pleaded, her eyes glistening with tears. Her excuse hit me like a brick. I had been consumed by my job, working long hours to provide for us, but it felt like an unjustified reason for her to betray me. "So you thought cheating was a solution. What happened to working things out? What happened to us?" "I thought we had lost what we had, Mark. I was wrong and I'm sorry. I want to fix this," she said, and I could see the desperation in her eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to quell the whirlpool of emotions surging through me. It was a mix of anger, hurt, and a tiny flicker of hope that maybe we could salvage something. But could I really forgive her? Was I willing to risk my heart again after she had so carelessly trampled over it? "I don't know, Jenna. I need time to think. You broke my trust, and that's not something I can just overlook," I replied, my voice finally softening but still firm. "Mark, please, I love you. I'll do anything to prove it," she exclaimed, tears streaming down her cheeks. That word, love, felt so heavy in that moment, tainted by the betrayal. I wanted to believe her, to feel that familiar warmth wash over me, but all I could think about were the messages, the lies, and the emptiness that had filled our home. As I walked away, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I knew I needed to make a decision soon. I had to take control of this situation. I couldn't let her dictate my emotions any longer. I spent the next few nights sleepless, tossing and turning, replaying every moment of our relationship in my mind. I thought about the laughter we shared, the dreams we had for our future, and the life we built together. Then I remembered the emptiness, the lies, and her betrayal. It was exhausting just thinking about it. I started reaching out to friends, seeking their advice. I needed perspective, something outside of the emotional turmoil that consumed me. I talked to Jake, my best friend from college, who had seen the ups and downs of my marriage. He was my sounding board, and I trusted him to give it to me straight. "Mark, you deserve better than this. You've invested so much into this relationship, but she's the one who threw it all away," Jake said bluntly during one of our conversations over a few beers. "What if I take her back? What if she means it?" I questioned, grappling with the confusion swirling in my mind. "Dude, listen. People make mistakes, but not everyone is worth a second chance. Think about what she did. You have to protect yourself and your heart," he advised, his sincerity cutting through my fog of ambivalence. His words stuck with me. Protect myself. That's what I needed to focus on. I had spent so long trying to be the perfect husband, but I realized I had neglected my own needs in the process. On a particularly sleepless night, I pulled out my journal, a habit I had long abandoned. Writing had always been a way for me to process my thoughts, and I needed that clarity again. I started jotting down my feelings, the pain, the anger, and the confusion. The act of writing became cathartic, allowing me to confront my emotions head-on without fear of judgment. I wrote about the betrayal, how Jenna's actions made me feel insignificant and unworthy. I poured my heart onto the pages, dissecting my feelings of anger and sadness, and slowly, I began to see a clearer picture of what I wanted. I realized that I didn't want to live in a broken Marriage filled with resentment and mistrust. I wanted respect, love, and fidelity. As I wrote, a plan began to form in my mind. I wouldn't just sit back and let this happen to me. If Jenna thought she could toy with my heart, she was in for a rude awakening. I wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear. I was done being a fool. I needed to reclaim my power and decide how to move forward. With or without Jenna, I would find my way back to myself. With my resolve hardening, I knew it was time to confront Jenna again. I had spent days contemplating everything, the trust that was shattered, the love that felt tainted, and the uncertainty of our future. I realized I could no longer be passive in this situation. I needed to take charge and decide what was best for me. I called Jenna and asked her to meet me at a nearby cafe. My heart was racing as I drove there, a mixture of anxiety and determination coursing through me. The cafe was bustling with life, people chatting, laughter echoing in the air. But I felt like I was in a bubble completely, isolated from the world around me. When Jenna arrived, she was dressed casually, but there was an anxious energy about her. She sat down across from me, her eyes searching my face. "Mark, thank you for meeting me," she said softly, her voice tinged with hope. "Let's get straight to the point, Jenna," I replied, cutting her off. "I need to know whether you really want to fix this or if you're just scared of losing what we have." Her expression shifted from relief to seriousness. "I want this, Mark. I want to do whatever it takes to make things right," she said earnestly. "Then tell me why I should believe you. Words don't mean anything anymore, Jenna. I need to see action. I need to know that you're willing to put in the work to rebuild my trust," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I will, I promise. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut off all contact with Jake, whatever you need," she pleaded, her eyes wide with desperation. "Therapy is a start, but it's going to take more than that. I need space to figure this out. I can't just jump back into things like nothing happened," I responded, trying to keep my emotions in check. Jenna nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes, Mark. Just please don't give up on us," she said, her voice breaking. As I sat across from her, I felt a pang of sympathy. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay, but I also felt the walls I had built around my heart starting to solidify. I couldn't let myself get swept up in her emotional plea again. "I'm not giving up on us, I'm just trying to protect myself. I need time to think about what I really want. I hope you can respect that," I said, trying to maintain a sense of composure. "Of course," she replied, her voice barely a whisper as she wiped away a tear. We parted ways after that conversation, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had set some boundaries, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control in my life. But I also knew the path ahead would be complicated. Following weeks were a blur of emotions. I immersed myself in work and sought solace in my friends. I leaned on Jake for support, confiding in him about my struggles. "You're doing the right thing, Mark. Take your time. You don't have to rush into any decisions," he reminded me, always the steady voice of reason. Meanwhile, Jenna was making visible efforts to show me she was committed to repairing our relationship. She started attending therapy sessions and even sent me updates about her progress. I appreciated her attempts, but those actions alone weren't enough to erase the betrayal etched in my mind. I began to reflect on the kind of relationship I wanted moving forward. I wanted honesty, respect, and a partner who would choose me every day, not just when it was convenient. The thought of rebuilding something with Jenna was daunting. I wasn't sure if I could trust her again, and each time I thought about it, it made my stomach churn. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't control Jenna's actions, but I could control mine. I began to focus on myself, hitting the gym, reconnecting with old friends, and even taking up new hobbies. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. It was therapeutic, a way for me to express the whirlwind of emotions I was feeling. One Friday evening, I invited Jake over to my apartment for a beer and some much-needed guy time. We sat on the balcony, the sunset painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink, and I breathed in the cool evening air. "Man, I can't believe everything you've been through. How are you holding up?" Jake asked, taking a sip from his beer. Honestly, I'm still trying to figure it all out. I want to be strong, but it's hard when you feel so betrayed, I admitted, letting out a sigh. Have you thought about what you want to do, like for real? He pressed, looking me straight in the eye. I'm still thinking, but I know that trust is a huge issue for me right now. I can't just forget what happened. Part of me wants to forgive her, but another part feels like I'd be setting myself up for more pain. I replied, feeling the weight of my indecision. You don't owe her anything, man. You have to do what's best for you. Your happiness comes first, Jake said, his tone serious. His words resonated deep within me. I realized I needed to prioritize my own well-being regardless of what Jenna wanted. As I sat there, I began formulating a plan. I wouldn't just be reactive. I would take proactive steps to reclaim my happiness. After that night, I decided to talk to Jenna one final time. I needed to be clear about my feelings and intentions. I wanted her to understand that while I wasn't ready to fully forgive her, I also wasn't closing the door entirely. But I knew I had to set boundaries and expectations moving forward. I could feel a new determination rising within me. I was done being a passive participant in my own life. It was time to take the reins and decide how I would navigate this rocky road ahead. Jenna had made her choices, but now it was time for me to make mine, and I intended to do it with my head held high. I arranged to meet Jenna at a quiet park, a neutral place where we could talk without interruptions. The sun was shining, the kind of day that could easily trick you into thinking everything was okay in the world. But in my heart, I knew we were far from that ideal. When I arrived, Jenna was already sitting on a bench, her hands fidgeting nervously in her lap. As soon as she saw me, her face lit up with a smile that quickly faltered when she noticed the serious look on my face. "Hey," she said softly, standing up to greet me. "Hey," I replied, taking a seat beside her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking and I need to share my perspective and where I stand." "Okay," she responded, her brow furrowing as she sensed the weight of my words. "I know you've been working on yourself and I appreciate that, but I want to be clear. Rebuilding trust is going to take time. I'm still hurt by what happened and I can't just erase those feelings," I began, my voice steady but firm. "I understand, Mark, I really do. I messed up and I can't express how sorry I am," Jenna said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's not just about saying sorry, it's about actions, and I need to see that you're committed to making this right," I continued. "I need to know that you're not just saying words to keep me around. I promise you, I'll do everything I can to prove that to you," she insisted, her eyes pleading with sincerity. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. "I also need space to decide if I can truly forgive you. I think it's best if we take a break from each other for a while. I need time to think about what I want, and I can't do that while I'm entangled in all of this." Jenna's expression fell. "A break? Mark, are you sure? I can't stand the thought of losing you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm not saying it's over. I just think we need time apart to really evaluate what this relationship means to both of us. I need to figure out if I can trust you again," I explained, my heart heavy with the weight of my decision. She nodded slowly, tears spilling from her eyes. "I understand. I just want you to know that I'm committed to making this right," she replied, her voice wavering. "I hope you mean that. I want to believe you, but I can't just jump back into things. I need to protect myself," I replied, feeling a pang of sadness for what we were losing. We spent the next few hours talking, reminiscing about the good times we shared, but every laugh carried a hint of an ache that reminded me of the betrayal. I felt a mix of emotions, sadness for what could have been, anger at what had transpired, and a deep sense of loss. As we parted ways, Jenna reached out to hug me tightly, and I found myself tensing up. I hugged her back, but it felt different now, like I was holding on to a ghost of what we once had rather than the reality of our relationship. In the following weeks, I embraced my new routine. I focused on personal growth, exercising regularly, and spending time with friends and family. I felt lighter, even if the burden of betrayal still lingered in the back of my mind. I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been overshadowed by the complexities of my marriage. But even as I moved forward, Jenna reached out often, checking in on me and sharing updates about her therapy sessions. I appreciated her efforts, but I remained cautious. I didn't want to get swept up in the emotional tide again. One evening I was hanging out at Jake's place and he could tell something was on my mind. "You look like you're in deep thought. What's going on?" he asked, looking concerned. I just, I don't know if I should keep talking to Jenna or if I need to cut her off completely, I admitted, rubbing the back of my neck in frustration. "Dude, you have to do what feels right for you. If you think talking to her is keeping you tied to the past, maybe it's time to let go," Jake suggested, his tone serious. "I know, but I also don't want to be cold-hearted. She's trying to fix things and I want to be fair," I replied, wrestling with the conflicting emotions. Fairness doesn't mean sticking around for someone's emotional convenience. You have to prioritize yourself first. You deserve to move on. Jake encouraged. That night I went home with his words echoing in my mind. I realized I couldn't be the emotional crutch for Jenna while I was trying to heal myself. I needed to make a decision that prioritized my mental health and emotional well-being. A few days later, I decided to set firm boundaries with Jenna. I sent her a text, explaining that while I appreciated her efforts, I needed some space to truly figure things out. I told her that I would be disconnecting for a while to focus on myself. Her response was immediate, filled with desperation. "Mark, please don't do this. I'm trying so hard, I just need a chance." But I knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her desperation cloud my judgment again. I ignored the flood of messages that followed, focusing instead on my own journey of healing. As the weeks turned into months, I started to feel more like myself again. I filled my life with new experiences, traveled with friends, and even signed up for a painting class. Each brushstroke on the canvas became a way to channel my emotions, a visual representation of my healing process. Then one evening I received a call from Jake. "Hey man, want to grab some dinner? I found a new Italian place that's supposed to be amazing," he suggested. "Sure, sounds good," I replied, eager for a night out. As we sat down for dinner, our conversation naturally wandered to life, love, and everything in between. "So, how are you feeling about everything with Jenna?" he asked, his tone casual but probing. "I think I'm finally starting to accept what happened. It still hurts, but I'm realizing that I have the power to move forward," I admitted, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. "Good. You're doing great, man. Just remember that you deserve happiness, and if that's away from her, then so be it," Jake said, raising his glass in a toast. I smiled, raising my own glass in agreement. "To new beginnings," I said, feeling a spark of hope for the future. As I navigated this path of rediscovery, I finally felt like I was gaining my footing. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, self-worth, and the importance of prioritizing my own happiness. I realized that even though Jenna had betrayed me, I had the power to define my own path forward, and I was determined to embrace it. As the weeks passed, I found a new rhythm in my life. I was rediscovering who I was beyond the confines of my marriage with Jenna. I was focused on my goals, my friendships, and my own happiness. Each day felt like a new chance to rebuild my identity, and I was determined to make the most of it. It was during this time of reflection and growth that I received an unexpected text from Jenna. It was a simple message. "Can we talk? I've been thinking about everything." I stared at my phone, the memories of our last conversation flooding back. My initial reaction was to ignore it, but curiosity pinged in the back of my mind. After everything we'd been through, could there still be a chance to have an honest conversation? I decided to give her a call instead of texting back. "Hey, Jenna, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Mark, I've been doing a lot of reflecting on my own actions and how they've affected you. I realize now that I pushed you away when I needed to be open and honest. I've learned a lot in therapy and I just want to explain my side," she said, her voice earnest and pleading. "Okay, I'm listening," I replied, leaning back in my chair, unsure of where this conversation would lead. I was so caught up in my insecurities and feeling neglected that I made a terrible choice. I didn't know how to communicate with you, and instead of addressing my feelings, I chose to run from them. I thought having fun with someone else would fill the void I felt, but it only made things worse, she admitted, her voice trembling. "Jenna, it's going to take more than apologies and explanations to rebuild trust. You know that, right?" I reminded her. "I understand, but I want you to know that I'm committed to making things right. I'm willing to work on myself and our relationship, but only if you're willing to meet me halfway," she continued, her sincerity evident. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, frustration, but also a flicker of hope. It was clear she was trying to change, and part of me wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for us, but the scars of betrayal ran deep and I had to be cautious. "Let's meet up and talk in person," I said finally, still unsure but willing to hear her out. We arranged to meet at a cafe we used to love, one filled with memories of laughter and connection. As I walked in, I felt a mix of nostalgia and anxiety. There she was, sitting at a corner table looking both nervous and hopeful. "Hey," she greeted me with a tentative smile. I replied, taking a seat across from her. Jenna looked different. She had a resolve in her demeanor that I hadn't seen before. "I've been working on changing my habits and how I communicate. It's been hard, but I want to show you that I'm serious about making things right," she said earnestly. "I want to believe that, Jenna, I really do," I admitted. "But it's going to take time for me to see those changes. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight." "I know. I'm prepared for that. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I can be better for you," she insisted, her eyes shining with sincerity. Over the next few hours, we talked openly about our feelings, our fears, and our hopes for the future. I listened as she shared her progress in therapy, her newfound understanding of her own insecurities, and her commitment to working on herself. It felt refreshing to have an open dialogue, but I remained cautious. "I need to know that you're not just saying this to win me back, but that you genuinely want to change," I emphasized. "I promise, Mark. I want to be a better person, not just for you, but for myself," she replied, her voice steady. I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this conversation could be the beginning of something new, but I also knew I had to protect my heart. I wasn't ready to jump back into a relationship, but I was open to the possibility of rebuilding our connection at a slower pace. As the weeks went by, we continued to communicate regularly. Jenna was proactive in showing me her efforts to change, sending me updates about her therapy sessions and even attending workshops on communication skills. I found myself feeling a mix of admiration and skepticism. While I appreciated her determination, I was still guarded, unsure if I could fully trust her again. One day, after a particularly cathartic conversation, I decided to invite her to join me for a painting class I had started attending. We had enjoyed painting together in the past, and I thought it might be a good way to reconnect without the pressure of heavy discussions. When the day arrived, I was nervous. Jenna arrived with a big smile, her enthusiasm evident. "This is going to be fun," she exclaimed, her eyes lighting up as we entered the studio. As we painted side by side, I found myself relaxing, laughing, and rediscovering the joy we once shared. The atmosphere was light and creative, and I felt a warmth begin to creep back into my heart. For the first time in a long while, I could see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with. But just as quickly as the warmth appeared, fear crept back in. I reminded myself that I couldn't allow myself to get swept away. I needed to stay grounded and focused on what truly mattered. After our class, we sat outside, sipping coffee and chatting. As we talked, I asked about her therapy and how she was feeling about her progress. "I feel like I'm finally understanding my own emotions. There was so much I was avoiding, and now I'm learning how to communicate better," she shared, her voice full of hope. "I'm glad to hear that," I replied, genuinely appreciating her growth. "But there's still a long way to go. I need time to see if this can work." "I understand, Mark. I'll be patient. I just want you to know that I'm committed to making this right," she said, reaching for my hand. I hesitated for a moment but then took her hand in mine. It felt familiar, comforting, but also terrifying. I knew I had to tread lightly. I wasn't ready to open my heart fully, but perhaps we could start building a new foundation. As I sat there, I realized that while the road ahead would still be rocky, there was a chance for healing. I didn't know what the future held for us, but I was willing to explore it, one cautious step at a time. For the first time in a while, I felt a flicker of hope emerging from the ashes of betrayal, and I was determined to see where this journey would lead. As time moved on, Jenna and I continued to take small steps forward together. We kept meeting for coffee, attending painting classes, and engaging in conversations that felt more authentic than they had in a long time. I was still cautious, but I could see glimmers of the woman I had fallen in love with beneath the weight of her past mistakes. One evening, after a particularly enjoyable painting session, we sat on a bench outside the studio watching the sun set. The sky was awash with vibrant colors, a stunning backdrop for the moment we were sharing. I turned to Jenna and took a deep breath, unsure how to articulate what I was feeling. "Jenna, I've been doing a lot of thinking about us." I started, my heart racing. "I can see that you're making an effort and I appreciate that, but it's still hard for me to forget what happened." "I know," she replied, her voice steady. "I'm not asking you to forget, I just want the chance to earn back your trust, even if it takes time." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I want to believe that we can rebuild what we once had, but it's going to take a lot of work from both of us. I'm not ready to jump back into a full relationship yet. I need to feel secure in knowing that this isn't just a temporary change for you." "I completely understand," she said, her eyes earnest. "I'm committed to this, Mark. I don't want to lose you again. I'll do whatever it takes." That willingness to work together gave me some comfort, but I needed more than just her promises. I needed to see consistency over time. Over the next few months, we continued to navigate this newfound dynamic, and I learned to appreciate the small moments, the laughter, the conversations, the way she would light up when talking about her therapy progress. However, I still had doubts. Trust was a fragile thing, and I found myself questioning whether it could ever return fully. I often confided in Jake about my concerns, and he reminded me to trust my instincts. "Just take it one day at a time, man. Focus on your own happiness first," he advised. Eventually, I decided to take a leap of faith. One Saturday, I invited Jenna over for dinner. I wanted to create a comfortable environment where we could talk openly. I spent the day cooking, trying to channel both my nerves and excitement into the meal. When she arrived, I could see the anticipation in her eyes. We sat down to eat, and as we enjoyed the food, I felt a sense of warmth enveloping us. It was different from before, a mix of hope and apprehension. As we finished the meal, I took a deep breath and said, "Jenna, I know it's been a long journey, but I want to take a step forward, a real one. I think I'm ready to see where this goes, but I need to know you're in this for the long haul." Her eyes widened, a spark of happiness igniting within them. "I promise you, Mark, I'm in this for the long haul. I've never been more committed to making things work," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Then let's take things slowly. I want us to be honest with each other, and I want to communicate openly. If something bothering me or if I feel uncertain, I need to know that we can talk about it without fear of judgment," I explained, my heart racing at the vulnerability of the moment. "Absolutely. It's the least I can do," she replied, her sincerity evident. As we talked over dessert, I felt a small sense of relief wash over me. The idea of moving forward felt less daunting now that we had established an open line of communication. I could see that Jenna was genuinely trying, and for the first time in a while, I began to believe that perhaps we could rebuild something beautiful from the ashes of our past. In the weeks that followed, we continued to take it slow. We went out on casual dates, explored new hobbies together, and enjoyed each other's company. Each moment felt like a careful negotiation between cautious optimism and lingering doubt, but I was determined to see it through. One evening, while we were watching a movie at my place, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. I turned to Jenna, who was curled up next to me, her head resting on my shoulder. "You know, I never expected to find myself sitting here with you again, but I'm glad I am," I said softly. Her eyes met mine, and I saw a mix of gratitude and vulnerability. "I'm grateful too, Mark. I know it's been a rough road, but I believe we can make this work," she replied, her voice steady. In that moment, I realized that love wasn't just about the good times. It was also about facing the hard times together, learning from mistakes, and choosing to move forward with open hearts. We still had a lot of healing to do, but I felt hopeful. As I lay there with Jenna, I understood that our relationship would never be the same as it was before. But perhaps that was a good thing. We were forging a new bond built on honesty, vulnerability, and the willingness to grow together. From that day forward, I promised myself that I would remain as open and honest as possible. I would work on my own fears and insecurities while supporting Jenna in her journey. We were both committed to learning and evolving, and while I knew the path ahead would still come with challenges, I felt ready to face them together. As I looked into Jenna's eyes, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had learned that sometimes love requires us to let go, to grow, and to embrace new beginnings. I was ready to face whatever came next, hand in hand with the woman I still loved, ready to create a new future together.